Welcome to Trauma and Transcendence, where healing meets awakening. I'm Amanda M. Dodd, your guide on this transformative journey. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Let's transcend together. Hello, soulful seekers. Welcome back to Trauma and Transcendence. For some reason, I am hearing an echo, and I'm not sure where that's coming from. I feel like it might be my cell phone, which should be muted. I am so sorry. As you can see, I am live again, and I am not used to being live, so always an adventure, isn't it? In any case, I am back from Vegas. I had a wonderful time, had a good presentation, got to meet some incredible, inspiring colleagues. That was very exciting. And I am highly distracted by wherever the sound is coming from. So give me a brief moment while I figure this out, because that is literally going to drive me crazy. I feel like my headphones aren't working. No, it can't be this. Could it? I am also probably not streaming where I was hoping to stream today. I've been having problems with Riverside. And for some reason, Riverside doesn't want to acknowledge that I have Facebook pages. So if you're lucky enough to see this, you either chose to join me and click the link, or you are finding this on my Facebook personal profile, it looks like. But I don't think that it's coming through on my page as I would like it to. And what it sounds like is that my laptop has speakers open, and if I think I can fix this, it would be so much better. Headphones, Logitech, no, definitely not. There we go. She got it, I think. No, I am still hearing background noise. Okay, well, that's incredibly obnoxious. I don't know how this recording is going to go. We may just be missing an episode when I'm done this live here. But in any case, you are able to join me. There is a link to join. I do have it on the Facebook event. So if you'd like to come into Riverside, you're welcome to. And there is a live stream chat where I should have access to all of the messages. So here we are. In any case, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Look at this. I got a present while I was at HypnoThoughts Live. I got my copy very, very early. Dan brought it with him. In case that's backwards, it's the Hypno Cafe magazine for summer. And there are some really great articles in this edition. So you may want to check that out. If you are a hypnotherapist, submit your articles, share your genius. Dan is really wonderful as an editor as far as finding new talent to bring in to share. That I highly recommend. So what else? Tonight, as you can see, I am not in the Salt Cave. It was supposed to be visiting a loved one in spirit, but I am here. So part of that is I caught the crowd that was going around Vegas, and so I'm not feeling the best. And just in case I do have COVID, I've decided to stay home and let it work itself out over the next couple of days. So no Salt Cave tonight, and I want to say the next time that I am in the Salt Cave is going to be a brief minute. Let's see here. I want to say that it's going to be August. Where are you? Let me just head over to the Apothecary events so that I can give you the right days for actual. And then, as you know, I'm taking a bit of a hiatus from things to kind of refine what I'm doing in my business right now, what I'm doing with my hypnotherapy practice. I'm aware that I'd like to do more coaching. And then, of course, there's the way that mediumship integrates into my world, which is what we're talking about tonight. So I didn't catch many clips from the event, unfortunately. Okay, so it looks like the next time I'm in the Salt Cave is going to be in August, and it's going to be past life regression, and I'm going to be there on Thursday, the 15th of August. So that is the next one if you're local and you're hoping to catch that. that's when that will be happening. That is a group past life regression, just a basic one. We're not doing any starseed past lives or anything too wild, just a good experience if you've never had past life regression before and you'd like to have that experience. But I am taking time to figure out what I'd like to do with my business. There are so many things that I'm able to work on and so many things that I'm passionate about. And I really want to find a way to bring them together a little more and have more diverse and really integrative sessions. That's exciting to me. So I'm taking some time to figure that out this summer, and summer feels like the perfect time to do that. And when I need a break, then that's a good excuse to go do some self-care and go enjoy kayaking. That's my plan. Hopefully you didn't miss me too much. I had set you up with an episode while I was gone. So last time you got to meet the beautiful Connie Jo Holmes with all of her insight on trusting your gut. What did you guys think of that episode? I'd like to hear about it. And today, what I'd really like to talk about is loved ones in spirit. But before I dive in, I do want to invite you to bring your questions. And if you have questions, put them in the chat, because I'm rarely live. And because I am, we get this really cool opportunity to actually connect more. Okay. So something else coming up actually is I'm going to be on trying to decide if it is the Hypno Cafe podcast or if it is the Michigan Hypnosis related podcast. But on the 29th, I will be joining Dan Goyette on his podcast to talk about traveling to conferences as a hypnotist. And some of the things I've learned, I learned a couple of things the hard way this time around. And there were things that I'd learned from previous conferences too. So I thought, how great for us to have that conversation and to share, so that this way, if you've never been to a hypnotherapy conference, you're not sure what to expect. Ideally, this will give you some coordinates and know how to work with that. I think I found the problem. Look at that. That is not supposed to be like that. And it won't allow me to change it. Maybe. We will see. It's highly distracting. I am so sorry for this. I have no ability to change it. And every time I take my laptop somewhere, this is what happens. Inevitably, I come back and then things are not exactly as I'd like them to be. They're a little out of sorts. And it takes a little bit of tweaking. But in any case, I'll be on his podcast. We'll be talking about going to hypnotherapy conferences, some tips and tricks to make your travel and your events feel better. Things that you may want to have, things you may want to be prepared for. I definitely learned some things, so you could count on me having some insights for that. But oh my God, Vegas was so fun this year at HypnoThoughts Live. There were wonderful presenters. Oddly enough, it happened during that whole glitch thing with Microsoft. So a lot of people were affected. There were some people who actually didn't make it in at all. There were some people I was excited to meet in person and wrap my arms around, and we didn't get the chance because they couldn't make it. Travel arrangements were disturbed. I myself had a 2-hour delay coming back. But for me, that was it. But for other people, it was a little more dire. And then the hotel had some weird things that happened with charges, and I'm still not past it. I haven't figured that all out yet. But it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. Kind of waiting for that to happen. I had tried to give myself extra days to plan some self-care in there, and only made it to the pool one day. As you can see, I did get a bit of color, so looking a little less bland over here. Very, very helpful. And it was a really good day. It felt amazing to just, after the conference, relax, enjoy the pool, get some sunshine, soak up that vitamin D, all of those good things. While I was away, I did do a mediumship reading, and so I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about that as well. So tonight, what I really want to deepen into is loved ones in spirit. What does that mean to have a loved one in spirit? A loved one in spirit is someone who has transitioned who is deceased, no longer physically here with us. And that can be anyone from a family member, that can be people that you looked up to in life. It's not uncommon for me to do a reading and for someone's teacher to come through or an old coach, other people's parents. That happens often as well. Anyone we've come into contact with. Sometimes I'll do a reading and an old boss will come through because they had a significant relationship. And it's just fascinating, but these relationships don't just go away. So they're important. It can also be a lot of pets, a lot of animals that we've loved, especially the bigger ones, but dogs frequently come through. This weekend, actually, I'm going to be at a local event in Streetsboro for animals. That's going to be fairly exciting. It's called Paw Pet-tacular. And I'm going to be there offering emotion code and animal communication. Incidentally, never a dull moment with me. When I was at the airport, I was just kind of quietly sitting in my seat, and I felt once or twice like something brush against me and touch my hair. And I didn't think too much of it. I thought it was just the person behind me. But lo and behold, there was no person behind me. It was a tiny little dog. And this thing jumped over my shoulder and into my lap to look me dead in the eyes. And so I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, like you must be like worried about travel or something. And so I'm comforting this dog, just giving it some pats. This thing is licking my entire face. And so I give it a little bit of Reiki, and then I hear the dog kind of connecting to me and sending me images and sounds. So my clairvoyance, my clairaudience kind of kicked on. And the dog is like, I'm anxious, like I'm feeling worried about the ear thing. That's what I called it, the ear thing going on the plane. And I was trying to show the dog, oh, swallow, like swallow, and it's going to help the ear thing. And I don't know if the dog quite understood it, but after it soaked up enough love, I gave it back to the owner. It could have stayed. It was just planted in my lap, and this thing just wanted nothing but to come home with me, I think. It's like, oh goodness, I have 4 dogs already. If I bring another one home, they will not be happy. In any case, as the lady was going to catch her flight, I just promptly said, by the way, I'm also an animal communicator. When it's time to ascend, give your dog some treats or something to get her to swallow. It's going to help with the ears. And her eyes just bugged out of her head. And she's like, oh, okay. She probably thought I was crazy at that moment, but nonetheless, never a dull moment in my life. And so that was my experience on the way to Vegas. Too funny. In any case, what I was telling you was I'm heading to Paw Pet-tacular Dog Show. It is Sunday in Streetsboro, Ohio, from 11 to 5. And I'm going to be on hand doing animal readings just like organically happened at the airport with the little dog that jumped into my lap. And so people can bring their pets, or you can actually bring your photos, and we can do an animal reading from your photos. That is enough to learn some things about your pet. Your pet will tell me some things about you if it's pertinent, if it comes up. Sometimes they worry about their owners. They want to see their owners take more of a rest or deal with things emotionally different. It's amazing what they say. Sometimes you never know what a pet is going to say about its owner. So that's always really entertaining and fun. So that's what I'll be doing. And it'll be a great day. I'm really looking forward to that. Animal readings it's so different. And because when you're doing a reading, whether it's an animal reading or whether it's mediumship, that all happens from the right brain. That all happens when you're dipping in and out of those various levels of trance. And so things like logic don't transcend easily. The only time I'm in the left part of my brain at all is to convey to my sitter what it is that I've just seen, heard, know, or experienced. And so sometimes like things dogs may convey like, oh, I enjoy outside because I like the green. It's like, oh, okay, they're talking about grass. But logically, that doesn't come through. And so at one point, I'd actually taught a colleague how to do animal communication herself, because as a medium and as an animal communicator, it's actually a little bit harder for me to work on my own. It's hard for me sometimes to be unbiased enough to read my animals because I'm so close to it. And so actually, I had asked her to read my little baby pug, who you have heard snoring on this podcast so many times already. And we'd had some trouble potty training at one point. It seemed like she just didn't get it. And the kicker was that she thought it was a game. So she thought we were having fun. And then when my colleague said, no, she's not having fun, she doesn't want to do this anymore, the dog kind of went, oh, and then like kind of hung her head. And so I was asking the colleague, like, what is it she needs to motivate her to go to the bathroom in the proper place? And she described the treats that I had been feeding the dog that I hadn't, they aren't regular treats that we buy. And basically, she had described it as being like looking like a Werther's original and having a green bag. And here's the fun thing about it. The dog described the bag as green. When I looked at the bag, it is like a pink color. And when I looked it up, dogs are actually colorblind to reds and pinks. And so for her, the bag looked green. And when I looked at side of the treats, they actually did look like Werther's original treats. And so she knew exactly what treat she wanted, what the bag looked like, and that was what she'd wanted to go to the bathroom. And what's really fun is when I do these animal readings or when other people do them, is with animals, it's not like they can take in suggestion and be in hypnosis, but with these readings, you will see a change in the behavior. And that kind of validates everything itself. And so with her, that's what it was. It was a change in the behavior. As long as I was giving her treats, she was motivated to go outside because now she finally understood that no, this is not a game that your mom wants to play. And so she's been fairly good since then. I'm not going to say she's been perfect, but she's been far better. And that's been nice. So that's what I like about doing these readings. We can kind of find challenges and begin to make changes in the behavior. And it's not that different. So whether I'm doing animal communication on a pet that is living or on a pet that is a loved one in spirit also makes no difference. It is a little, I don't want to say it makes no difference, but I can do both. And part of it is just having that understanding. Sometimes it's hard to tell between the energy when one is alive fully and when one is past because it's happening in the clairvoyance center. And for me, it's a very subjective experience. I'm seeing it like it's playing on the screen in my mind. And it's hard to tell if they're living or past sometimes. It's also hard to tell when I'm doing things like a reading of when something is an image and possibly a photo that exists. And so that happened as I was doing a mediumship reading during HypnoThoughts Live Vegas. I was reading for a gentleman who really wanted to have an understanding of his mother and their relationship. And so while I was doing that reading, there were a couple of things that I saw, but as I saw them, there was movement. I could see action. And yet, when he had shared the recording of the reading with a family member, the family member came back and said, oh, yeah, I have that photo. I have that photo of you doing this thing. And there were actually, so there were two photos that could support the reading. And that was a very cool and fun validation for him to receive. One of them, and this is what I love about evidential mediumship, is that we are looking for things that are going to validate proof of life. We're really trying to understand the loved one in spirit, trying to know who they were as a person, how they felt, what was important to them, and all of those kinds of things. And so one of his family members, I want to say it was a cousin that came through, and the cousin was wearing like a cotton plaid shirt with suspenders. And so that like really stood out to me because It almost feels like when I think back to like the 90s, that was like a really big trend, wasn't it? The cotton plaid shirt with suspenders. And I think I flat out told them at one point, it reminds me of the Red Green Show because they used to have these red and green suspenders, and they often wore like the cotton and the plaid. And so funny. In any case, yeah, there was a photo, a photo of the outfit exactly. God, it can be so challenging sometimes when we're doing this work, when we are reading people's loved ones in spirit. For one, I find it very vulnerable to do as a reading because on my end, I have no idea if what I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, knowing, tasting, smelling, the whole gamut is precisely as it happened or just from that loved one's perspective. It can be really hard to say. And we each have memory that works in regards to the things that we feel and believe. And so sometimes when loved ones come through, they might not have the same perspective as the sitter does. The sitter might have a different memory recall, might have different beliefs of things. And so it's really tough to know, what is exactly so. So it's very vulnerable for me, I find, to do those kinds of readings. In any case, it's very much a process of trusting and surrender. And I have come to the point to where I just allow whatever it is to come through without judging or thinking too much about it. And so there were some really great things that had come through in his reading. The most important thing, though, was the catharsis and the healing. Because sometimes when we have those relating dynamics and it hasn't ended on a good note, people haven't gotten to talk about the things that are really important before their loved ones have passed. And it kind of gives us that opportunity to dig into what was the other person's mental, emotional, physical state, and why were they the way they were. And that was very much what we did in this reading. And so I was actually able to feel what this person's loved one was like in life. I could see some of the actions and choices that were made, the feelings on both sides. And it really gives us a chance to speak to that. And that's what I love about this work. And so while I don't do so many readings, because now I've really figured out a way to take myself out of the equation, because when you think about it, when somebody's getting a psychic, intuitive, or a mediumship reading, I feel like on some level, they're handing over their power. They're having to trust or buy into the things I'm saying. And I don't want to put somebody in that position. I don't want them to take my word for it. What I do want is for them to validate what's true and to let me know what maybe they're uncertain of. Oftentimes, what happens is they'll check in with a loved one, or someone else will have additional pieces of information that they can have the fuller picture of the puzzle come together. And so mediumship can take kind of time sometimes, and especially if when I'm reading for someone and they were younger at the time. If a grandparent is coming through as a loved one in spirit, they may have died young when my client was still relatively young. And so some of those earlier memories of things they did together, they might not recall them depending on the age. And it isn't until someone else validates it for them. Actually, I've had this happen myself as well. At one point, I was taking mediumship class. God, I've taken so many mediumship classes. And this one was more of a brushing up, because at that point I had walked away from mediumship for a little while. There was the whole point in time in Boston where I did mediumship and I practiced really well. I had taken class with Patricia Price. I had taken an advanced class with Rita Berkowitz, both wonderful mediums and teachers. And then I'd also taken a class with Kathy Brooke during an angel intuitive or angel healing practitioner certificate that I did. And it included a segment of mediumship. And what Kathy had taught us to do was channel a letter from a loved one The kicker was I didn't even make it to class that day. I was so excited about that class. And we had just gotten a brand new car. And at that point, I really had like severe poverty consciousness. And so I was so nervous about driving this brand new car because we'd never had anything so expensive or so luxurious up to that point. And I just had a huge sense of dread that day. And I think it was because of how the day ended. But essentially, as I was going to make my way to class, driving this brand new car, I caught a flat. It was the first time I'd ever caught a flat in my life. I'd driven over something really sharp, but unfortunately, it just took the tire right out. And I slowly drove until I could find somewhere relatively safe to park. And what I came across was a graveyard, and so I just pulled in because honestly, me being who I am, I have no fear of the dead. What I do have is fear of the living at night in strange places. And so I just really didn't want to be anywhere where there would be a lot of living people. So the graveyard seemed like a wonderful idea at that time. And so I ended up missing that class on how to channel the letter from a loved one. For better or for worse, I got notes, but I didn't get the actual instruction. And it was just a really wild night because I feel like that night I did a lot of spiritual work all the same. I was very connected to my angels at that time, had a lot of angel intuition come through. And so there I am in the graveyard and I'm seeing shadow creatures and I'm like, oh, great. This place needs cleaned up. And so when I'm aware of spirits or entities or energies needing to be cleared from a space, it's very likely that I'm going to call in angels first and foremost. And what archangels taught me that night was not only could I call forward the light, but I could make like a font, like a fountain of light that would act as a portal for entities and beings to be transported through. And that I could not only help those earthbound spirits who were ready to go through, often they would go through on their own very readily in a large area, but then also if they really needed help or there were any extras that maybe didn't want to go and were causing a bit of havoc, that I could call angels to help move them on. And so that was what I had learned that night. And the kicker is while I was sitting there doing this spiritual work, I was waiting for someone to come and help me replace the tire. It took them several hours. I think I was there for like three and a half hours. And lucky for me, there was a brand new Robert Ohotto podcast about grace and feeling grateful when you don't feel grateful. Needless to say, I didn't feel grateful because I was so excited about seeing that class and learning what Kathy was teaching to write and to channel a loved one so that people could receive those, because there's something wonderful about getting a letter, isn't there? A message, something that can be tangible that you can hold in your hands. Um, but Spirit had a different idea of how to train me that night, and that was how that happened. And then when the graveyard started to feel clear of all earthbounds and entities and lower shadow beings, as I sighed, felt relief, and had a bit of gratitude while listening to the podcast, well, then the tow truck came and fixed everything for me, and I was free to go. By then, the class was over. So I did get notes and I did read through them. And essentially, what started happening was I just began to practice it in my own way. And so for me, what that looked like was often meditating. And I would then allow any insights of the person's loved one in spirit to come through. So anything that happened as I began the reading from a distance was then part of the reading. So if there was a song that played in my head, if I heard a specific lyric or a movie came to mind, that is then part of the reading. If I'd had an odd thought that I wouldn't consciously normally think for myself, that was part of the reading. Because sometimes clairaudience can come through that way, in a more subjective experience. And it can come through in our own voice. And so I would sit and write out all of the impressions that I was experiencing. And after that, and that would usually, God, I used to spend so much time on that one part. Sometimes that would take me, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, especially while I was developing. Um, just because, again, the vulnerability of it and needing practice. And so I would do that. And then afterwards, I would take a small break. I would shake it off. Typically, clients that were asking for these were people that I didn't know. They were people who'd found me and only contacted me via email. These weren't people I had on social media. I wasn't interested in reading for anyone that I knew, because I didn't want to be biased and I didn't want to be swayed in any way. And it's much nicer as a medium if you know nothing. So that is always my preference with readings. I prefer to know nothing. That way I'm not in my head or second guessing myself, which can be a huge block to mediumship and connecting to loved ones in spirit. And then on the second half, I would allow spirit to come in closer. And typically, what I would ask clients for is the name of the loved one, the nature of the relationship, because names have always been challenging for me as a medium. It's just not one of my abilities. Several of the students that I've taught mediumship have that come through beautifully, and that's just within their gifts. For me, it is not often. Names is something that I struggle with, and so it's nice to just know. And then that vibration of the name is very much like a birth date. It's very much like a thumbprint. It's got a unique, energetic thread to it that I can then kind of follow through space and through time. And it allows me to anchor in a little more deeply. And then the relationship, because that's another thing that I have a hard time with in my mediumship, is knowing the nature of a relationship. I've had times where someone comes across extremely affectionate, almost like a romantic partner, only to find out it was like a father. And it's like, you've got to be kidding me. So I'm not even willing to play with that anymore. So my preference is to receive the person's full name and then the relationship, and then any questions they have for their loved ones in spirit that are open-ended questions. No yes or no questions. It has to have something with some depth. And so then basically I would invite spirit to come in closer and work on the questions with me one by one. And then also I'd ask them for memories, things that were important to them in their life, either experiences they'd had, something special about the person who was requesting the reading and receiving the reading so that they would know. And then also um, anything in regards to answering the questions, anything evidential that would come through, things they enjoyed in their life, things that had great significance to them, any memories. And then often I would ask for a message for the person who was going to receive the letter. Now, with loved ones in spirit, yes, we can connect to them. Yes, we want to enjoy them. We can continue developing the relationships. I actually personally myself had to do that because when my father had passed, we were estranged and we'd been estranged, at least for a decade. Estranged enough that I don't believe he knew how to contact me, but he knew how to contact my mother. In any case, when he passed, right at the day, as luck would have it, I was living in Texas at the time. I was relaxed in the bathtub, and what happens when we're relaxed? That's right. We begin to go into a light hypnotic trance. The brain just naturally shifts into that state. And I look over and I see a full body apparition of my dad. Not only is it a full body apparition of my dad, he has his mother on his left and his father. No, wait, I have that backwards. It was my left that his mother was on and his right that his father was on. All three of them were there from head to toe, surrounded in light, and they were beaming that same unconditional love energy that I'd recognized before. And by that time in McAllen, I had finished doing the letters from a loved one because, one, it was very vulnerable to do. It was very vulnerable to not know anything about the client and to dive into such deep things. And Spirit often does dive into deep things. They would tell me things about my client's life that they wanted to either validate or help them heal through. They would give insights about events that they had been to and things like that. And sometimes the readings were so good that, frankly, it scared me. I just kind of wanted to step away. And I didn't want anyone becoming kind of addicted to the process. And I think sometimes they can become dependent on a medium or a psychic. And I didn't want to be in that role. I really wanted the message I brought through to be about healing, to be about love, and to be about the ways to move forward with life. And so I kind of decided that I didn't want to do it anymore. And so in between that move from Boston to Texas, I kind of let it go. And then I became aware of, oh, I'd really like to go into coaching. I'd really like to be more of a place where I empower people to know what their choices are and to make them from a better informed place so that they can get towards their goals. And somewhere in there, hypnotherapy crept in, and I'll tell you that story one day, but not today. And so I was really focused at that moment at getting my clinical hypnotherapy done and coaching. And so I'd stepped out of mediumship. I still had personal experiences, but I didn't really do as many readings, and I didn't really feel like I needed to right at that moment, despite all of the training and work that I'd put into it. And so when I saw him, the rush of feeling that occurred, one, because of connection, two, because it was not anticipated. I was surprised. And then three, it was that same unconditional love beaming through from the light, from the same way that when my ferret died and the light came through and I experienced that transcendent experience of source, it was the same. And it was like, oh, shoot. And so I kind of said that. I kind of looked at him and said, shit. If you're here, you're not here, as in on earth. And it's like, okay, if I find out that you have passed, someone's going to find me, someone's going to look for me, someone's going to tell me. And if they do, then I promise I will do this work. I will share and connect people to their loved ones in spirit, because I no longer have reason to doubt my gifts or abilities. This will be the ultimate validation that this work is real and that I'm not just disassociating within my life, because that was a concern that I had too. It's like, am I just doing this to escape my life? Is this real, these things that I'm bringing through? Because it was so accurate sometimes that was scary. And I began to question. So when he kind of showed up that way, it was like, okay, I'll do this work. I will bring this out to the world. I will even teach. I will help other people get it. And so he moved on, and I did not find out from anyone that he had passed until 2 years later. By that time, it was 2019. We had just moved to Ohio, and that was a really complicated time because my stepson's mental health was kind of going through some big struggles, which ended up with me getting CPTSD for the second time. And then also, my mother had some relationship issues, and she chose right at that moment to alienate me from the family, taking with her my stepfather, my brother, and my nephew. So now I don't have relationships with any of them anymore, hardly at all. And so all of that happened all at once. And then a stranger found me on the internet. Someone actually who was my father's wife's sister-in-law. And she said, Amanda, you don't know how long I've been looking for you. I've been looking for you for 2 years. She found me on Facebook, of all things. And then I thought, oh no, I made that promise. Oh, why did I do that? And then it was like, oh, okay, now I need to make good. Now I actually need to show up, because I'm not the kind of person who just makes promises and doesn't keep them. And as luck would have it, the creative apothecary became a second home for me, and that became a place where I could not only see clients, but then also I began to teach mediumship. I held a mediumship circle, and often people would come in. Sometimes they would come in having never experienced mediumship before, not gotten a reading, not received a reading, but just was curious. In under an hour, I could teach them the basics and have them practicing. It got really wild. So I have and I do keep really good on that promise. And so since then, it's only grown. Now I do one on one mentoring for people who want to get to that deeper level and definitely want to get any challenges or issues out of the way. Is very effective. And to the point sometimes where then they actually read for me. And then I do test their readings to make sure that they are actually really well connected, getting good information. So they will perform a reading and I will silently watch in the background. With everyone's permission, of course, and then I will give them tips and tricks on how they could improve or let them know what they did that was absolutely stellar. Um, and then they go out in the world with their mediumship gift and they go out and practice readings. And that brings me so much more joy than doing mediumship itself. Because now I'm part of a huger ripple of healing and it's not as direct anymore. Now there are several mediums who've been trained with me who have this ability and who are out there doing the work. And so it feels like it's on a bit of a bigger scale, and that's exciting. But then, because of hypnosis and hypnotherapy, the more that I practiced mediumship, what I became aware of is, oh, this feels familiar. And it felt familiar because I then realized I'm doing, feeling, experiencing the same things when I'm doing a mediumship reading versus when I'm going into hypnotic trance. And so from there, it wasn't hard for me to guess, these things must be happening in the same place with the brain. And then I thought, oh, is it just a matter of semantics? When a hypnotherapist says that a client is experiencing visualization, experiencing guided imagery, or a visual hallucination, depending on how left brained the hypnotist is and how much in their neuroscience they're into, is it not then just also clairvoyance? And mediums and psychics call it differently. Does it mean it's a different thing? And I don't think it does. I think it is the very same thing. And so then what I realized is, oh my God, we all have the hardware. Every single one of us has the hardware. And what a hypnotist can do is access the software. What I didn't realize at that time is, granted, even for a hypnotist, I'm a little peculiar. Surprise! Shocker. It's been that way my entire life. I'm always kind of just doing things in my own way and at my own pace. And thank goodness for that. But what I began to realize is other hypnotists aren't taking clients who want to experience and connect with their loved ones in spirit. They don't know the ins and the outs of how to train mediums. And so, because I've had a foot in both worlds, I've been able to combine them in a really special way where I don't have the vulnerability anymore. I don't need to have my client hand over their power. Instead, I'm empowering them to have their own experience. And the more that a client can have their own experience of connecting with their loved ones in spirit, then the more they're able to actually enhance their natural gifts, learn how to do it on their own, and have steady connection throughout the important times in their lives. Now, granted, with loved ones in spirit, most of us will have experienced them, whether it's in a very vivid dream, which is not a dream, it is a visitation, and you'll know because you'll feel the emotionality of it, you'll feel the significance of it, it'll feel more vivid, and you'll feel the love from the loved one. And that's the goal of all of this. Whether it's evidential mediumship, or I'm giving a reading, or I'm guiding you to visit a loved one in spirit, the main goal is to reconnect you into the love, to reconnect you to the relationship. Circling back to where I was in my story, it was a complicated time. I had just been told my father had passed, my mother had alienated me from the family, and my stepson was having mental health issues and needing to go into residential psychiatric care, which later he then went to go live with his mother. That's a lot of stuff to go through all at once. And so I had complex PTSD that I was also trying to resolve. And somewhere in there, I was struggling. And I was already in therapy, and therapy wasn't quite enough. I had wonderful male therapists. They were very helpful. I had more than one because at one point insurance messed me up and I had to switch provider, which was awful. But I lucked out both times that time. Both of them were both fantastic and helped me quite a bit. But they couldn't seem to help me with some other things that were happening that I just didn't understand. And so I took my time to grieve the fact that that chapter between my biological father and I was done. That book, actually, I thought at that moment was done. And that's a very different kind of grief of, oh, when you realize the child in you is never going to have a certain type of relationship with a parent. And so I took my time to grieve and to explore that to the best of my ability. And then also, I was having some dreams. I was having dreams about the country house that my father had built with his own two hands. And so, for that reason, that was a very special place. I remember going there a lot in childhood and have some wonderful stories and experiences, and some not so wonderful ones too. But such is life, right? In any case, I decided to reach out to my favorite medium, who is Rita Berkowitz. And so when I need to connect to my loved ones, that is the person that I trust the utmost. And so I wanted validation and understanding for what was happening with the dreams that I was receiving. There was also my birthday had passed, and I received this wild email out of the blue for my birthday from the place in the country. And the wording on it was like, oh my God, how did they even manage to manifest something like this? So I wanted to talk to her about that too. And so we were talking about that. And I was realizing that, with CPTSD, I had gained all the weight back that I had originally lost. I had lost over 70 pounds. CPTSD and complicated grief brought it all right back. And so I shot all the way back up to somewhere between 230 and 240. And then I was having a hard time losing it. And partly I thought it was CPTSD, but then also just aware that my blood sugars were working different. And so as I was working with Rita, she's like, oh, you had diabetes in your family. You had diabetes on your father's side. And oh, by the way, you're going to have to work at this relationship because this is why your body is doing this now. You need to heal the relationship. And oh my God, I was so resentful. Never in my life have I felt resentful to a medium before. But I felt resentful at that moment because it was like, you've got to be kidding me. This man was an adult. He was an alcoholic all of his life. And then there was a phase of his life when he was a drug addict. I grew up the best I could most of the time without a father figure in the way that a father figure should have been. And I'm the one who has to heal the relationship. You're joking, right? No, she was not joking. She was very much serious. And she was also very right. And so, as a result of this, what I've been able to do is, in fact, heal the relationship. And so now, whether I'm working with a student or when I go frequent another medium to support their work or just to enjoy something, my dad is usually the first one out the gate next to Rocky, who was a Boston Terrier that I loved. And you'll hear all about him one day the next time I do a segment on my development as a medium. But in any case, oftentimes now when I'm training mediums, it used to be my grandmothers that helped me do that work. my omami, and my mamere. Now what I found is my father shows up. And I'm not going to say his name because, in the odd chance that you decide to develop with me as a medium and he shows up, I don't want you to have that hint ahead of time. We don't feed mediums over here. We let it be a very evidential process, and that's what I like to teach. So I've had several mediums that I've trained who've seen him, described him, given me his name, and I said, yeah, that's my dad. And now I also connect to him sometimes a couple of times a week still. So we've actually worked through all of the father-daughter issues that we'd had, and now have an amazing relationship with him. And I thought that the book was closed, and it wasn't. It was just a chapter. It was his physical chapter on earth that was closed. And so what I've learned is not only am I watched out and cared for, and we all are, by the way, this isn't just an Amanda thing, but also I can continue the relationships. I can continue to know about things in his life. I can continue to grow and to heal so that I don't have the guilt, the resentment, the upset, or the patterns that were manifesting as physical things in my life that I needed to resolve. And so that's largely why I then began to offer mediumship and connecting people to their loved ones in spirit through hypnosis. One, because it's easier. They're not going to question or doubt themselves. They're not going to question or doubt me. And instead, they're just in the experience, working and connecting with the loved one in spirit. Now, we can all do hypnosis the same way we can all do mediumship. It's built in to your energetic system. It's built into this this fleshy meat suit that we get, and everybody was issued one. So if you're currently here in a meat suit and you are watching this, congratulations, you are a medium. You have mediumistic abilities, and your brain naturally goes into hypnotic trance several times a day, because without it, you wouldn't get to sleep and you would inevitably experience psychosis. So, yes, we can all do it, but it looks and feels different than we anticipate. We're expecting Hollywood when we connect. And while sometimes messages can be very life enhancing, can be very uplifting and surprising, it's rarely a scene from Ghost where he's helping her make the clay pottery. You know what I mean? Like, it's not Hollywood. There's no lights, there's no camera, there's no action. It's a lot more subtle. It's a lot more subdued than that because it's so natural and we all have it. And so the biggest part of what I do is helping people realize, yes, this is what this ability looks and feels like. Now you know, you can recognize how many times you've been doing that already throughout your life. And what I love about that is the empowerment of it, because the moment someone's actually had time to experience and to play with and to test and learns how to communicate properly with some healthy boundaries and parameters, then it's a whole new world. And we get to really deepen into things and heal any issues that we'd had. We get to visit. It's like heaven has visiting hours. And so this was essentially my talk for HypnoThoughts Live. I wanted to tell other hypnotherapists out there, you can do this. You don't have to be a medium. You can do this for your clients. You can help them get the closure that they need. You can help them reach the catharsis, to ask the questions and to heal the relating dynamics that were happening before death, before the transition, because that's not the end all be all. And I know for some, maybe that's unsettling. For me, it's just a fact of life because I've had so many experiences. And so the other thing that is beneficial of this work is when clients get to experience it, they too lose that fear. They lose that fear of death. They lose that fear of living. And more likely, they're going to live full out after, because there's a feeling, a need, a desire to. and they don't want to hold back anymore. And that's a beautiful thing. So why do this work? Because it's beneficial. There are few people doing it and doing it so well that it changes enough lives. When you think about it, this is something we all have the capability to do. We can all do this. We can all experience this for ourselves, but we don't, because we don't understand how. We don't know how to identify it. And then if we do have some abilities, maybe for some people they were scary in childhood. It was a scary, looking through a child's eyes, a scary first mediumship experience that they had. They didn't know how to explain, or that the adults around them maybe didn't receive well. And when we see things through child eyes, it's very different than when we look at something through adult eyes. And so sometimes regression is a part of how I train my mediums. I may regress them to the part where they decided to shut their abilities down, to see what had happened there, to take a look at it, and to heal it so that they can access their abilities again, whether that's their intuition, their clairvoyance, their clairaudience, it doesn't matter. One of my favorite stories, even to this day, to tell, and we'll say that the name of the client was Kay. Kay had come in to develop mediumship and was aware of having abilities and just wanted to understand and refine them better. And so after the first session, where I essentially teach mediumship, the ins and the outs, I give a proper format and protocol for how to give a reading. Also, how to energetically work with our own abilities, how to clear our abilities, how to ground, how to raise vibration. All of those things are integral to a good reading. Then I tell them to go out and practice. And then I tell them, identify your abilities as they're coming off, label them, be aware of them, notice what the triggers were, so that you can learn to acknowledge it and receive it faster, and to have gratitude for it. The more we can tell the body, yes, this is exactly what I want, the more the body's going to deliver. It's just got that beautiful relationship with our soul, with our spirit. And so she came back the following week and she's like, okay, I was aware of clairaudience. I was aware of clairsentience. I even had some, clairalience and clairgustance happen. And I'm very clairempathy or clairsentient. Also some claircognizance. But she's like, I didn't have very much clairvoyance. Like I felt like it was black, like I just couldn't see. And I love this story so much because she is one of the more clairvoyant practitioners that evolved out of my training. So I regressed her to the point where it became a necessity to block off the clairvoyance. And she found herself in elementary school having an awareness that she was different and feeling mocked, feeling shamed by the other children her age, feeling different and wanting very, very much to fit in for safety. And so she decided right at that moment that it wasn't safe to be clairvoyant. And she put on a blue blindfold over her third eye. And so then we reasoned and we talked about, okay, but you were a child then. There were things you didn't understand. You're an adult now. You've got new skills, new abilities. I'm very much an advocate for my clients during these sessions. Because they can't always advocate for themselves when they're in that deeper state of trance. And so that's my job, is to do any kind of, not mediumship, but fighting for your rights. Essentially, I will advocate for you. I will negotiate. Mediation. That's what I'm trying to say. The other M. I will do some mediation at that point. And with the inner child, because that's where that had originated. And so we showed the inner child, oh, look who she's become. Look at the skills and abilities she has now. She's not afraid, and she very much wants this ability. And lo and behold, we were able to get the child to take the blue blindfold off. And then Kay became one of the more clairvoyant readers, one of the more clairvoyant mediums that I've trained so far. And I love that for her. And so that's the kinds of things that a hypnotist can do for a medium if they understand the nuances and the ins and outs of mediumship and have a good enough foundation of hypnosis. And so that was what I brought to HypnoThoughts Live, was a new awareness, and to give a simple process for people who might want to help their clients connect and to go through this. And then I also gave an incredible handout with deeper questions for healing on, okay, once they connect to their loved ones in spirit, here are some of the pitfalls, here are some of the workarounds, here are deep questions to ask to be able to facilitate these sessions. And something that can happen is loved ones in spirit can come in spontaneously into a hypnotic session. I've seen this over and over again, and I'm not the only one. Many other hypnotists have, but very few know how to open that door and to do it intentionally and as consistently as I've developed. I'm going to take a moment to be proud of that. In my weird little life, there are many things I never thought I would do, and this is certainly one. But this is one that I'm so proud of, and it brings me so much joy that it came through me, even though my relationship with mediumship has had its ups and downs. And as I tell my students too, it's not a direct line when you're developing your mediumship. There will be times when it's more important than others, and there will be times when it's just not priority. The body has other things to work on, and that's okay. So, in any case, my plea was to get other hypnotherapists to learn to understand the nuances of this work and to offer it to their clients, because the things we can do, the healing that can arrive, the relationships we can repair is massive. It's, as you can see, I'm passionate about it. It's a huge part of who I am in my life. And while it can happen spontaneously in certain kinds of sessions, particularly like the Dolores Cannon style past life regression, QHHT, I see it happen a lot there. Anytime we're doing deeper spiritual work, we're calling in guides or resources, a loved one in spirit can come through. And that just offers so many opportunities for the client to heal, to have forgiveness, or to give forgiveness, or to let go of any burdens they've been carrying, any fears or worries or doubts that their loved one isn't okay. And then also to get validation, because I'll have the loved one in spirit show you, tell you, and help you feel how they're showing up in your life, what signs or symbols they give you. I usually do it as part of a reading, but I do it as part of a session too. And so my big request was that people go out and begin to practice this with some of the tips that I gave them, but then also don't do it during other sessions. Let it be a standalone session. Let your clients be there. Let them heal. Let them get that closure, that forgiveness, that love. Let them take in anything they need to feel, and let it be the whole session. Let them revel in it, because we're walking around with our abilities off most of the time, and we live in a society that conditions that separates us from that inner realm where we can access our own healing. And we need it more now than ever, just as much as we need physical relationships where we need so many hugs a day. We need this connection to loved ones in spirit as well. So that was my talk at HypnoThoughts Live, and I shared some incredible notes. I did record it. I do need to clean it. I haven't looked at the recording yet because I've only been home for like a day. And then I spent most of yesterday sleeping because catching the crud, but then also I didn't sleep for 24 hours before that because of travel and delays. So bear with me. I will do the best I can to try to clean up that audio, and if I can get it cleaned up, I will have a sweet little digital class available for you with my handouts and with my notes in case you're interested in that. Then you'll be able to reach out and I will have that ready for you. But give me some time to edit the audio and to try to get it the best that I can. And then, of course, if you've got questions, I'd love to hear them. Unfortunately, I don't see any questions currently, and I'm guessing it's because probably not very many people were able to join this. The last time that I went live like this, it actually didn't show up until I was done recording. So I've got some things to work out on Riverside here. But it is kind of nice to just hop on here, go live, and not have to do a ton of editing. It's kind of a gift, particularly with how many podcasts I've been recording. I do have some incredible guests coming up for you. Some of them are hypnotists, some of them are incredible coaches. Laura Whitworth will be coming on the podcast. You can look forward to that in September. She's a spirit releasement practitioner who has developed her own modality, soul centered healing hypnosis, of which I am becoming certified currently. So, those are the sessions that I do, but I can't wait to have her on. She's going to share everything that she has to share about SCHH with you. Maybe, just maybe, she'll make a great little discount code for the class. And if it interests you, you can become a practitioner too. It is outstanding work to do. I still have a way to go with this certification, and I'm having a blast currently. It's wild to facilitate. I never know where it's going to go. I just know that people are going to heal, make big momentum and powerful changes. And that's very much like the visiting a loved one work that I do, because that's what I'm all about, is healing. So before Laura, I've got some other guests that are coming. You're going to enjoy them. Many of them are spiritual in nature, have had spiritual experiences, and they're going to come share with you. But that is it for now, sweet ones. And goodness, thanks for being patient with me while I've been traveling and exploring and enjoying conferences. I know some of you had wanted appointments, and I've had to book you out further than I ordinarily would, and it's just because I knew I'd come back and I would need a rest. But I am right back to work tomorrow. I'm already doing an SCHH session, and then on the weekend doing that event, the Paw Pet-tacular Dog Show in Streetsboro. So that is what I'm up to. That's what I've been doing. But let me know how you're doing and what you would like to hear and see next coming up on this podcast. I would be thrilled to bring forward more things for you. So don't hesitate to write in with your questions, your ideas, your curiosities, because your life, your curiosities, your passions, it matters. All right, loved ones, bye for now. And as always, stay inspired, continue healing, and remember that healing happens together. Bye. Thank you for joining us on this transformative episode of Trauma and Transcendence. Your stories matter. I would love to hear them and from you. Connect on our website, healingbeyondtrauma.com, or drop me an email at amanda@healingbeyondtrauma.com. Remember, healing is a journey we take together. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired. This is Amanda, wishing you bright blessings.